Hello and welcome everyone to your channel Lawpedia. This is me Jasmine, and in this particular video we'll be moving forward and covering the part 2 of your offenses against public tranquility, and we'll be covering the second aspect, that is rioting. We'll include the sections and the basic essential ingredients that you must be aware about. So rioting is a very common phrase जो कि आप न्यूज़ चैनल्स में you often hear that rioting has been committed or riots are taking place at so and so location. So what are the penal provisions for the same? What is the punishment of the same? We will be discussing that only in this particular video. So firstly, we need to quickly move forward and understand the first section that you need to read over here would be section 146 of your Indian Penal Code, which basically states what is rioting all about. Whenever force or violence is used by any unlawful assembly or by any member of the assembly in prosecution of the common object of such assembly. In this particular scenario, every member of such assembly is guilty of the offense of rioting. So what are the 2 or 3 components that you need to fulfill for a particular act to be known as rioting? Firstly, that there should be an unlawful assembly. This particular factor we have already covered. Section 141 IPC deals with your unlawful assembly. You can go ahead and watch the previous video for the same. And secondly, what should be there? There should be use of force or violence by the members of the assembly in prosecution of the common object. So if you haven't watched the previous video, you can go ahead and first watch that, because in that we have clearly defined and understood what the common object is and when a common object becomes unlawful and when the assembly becomes an unlawful assembly under section 141. So I hope आपको 2 criteria of rioting defined under section 146 of IPC absolutely clear है. Now section 147 of the IPC prescribes the punishment for rioting. So 147 is your punishment section, which basically states whoever is guilty of rioting shall be punished with an imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 2 years or with fine or with both. Moving forward, now the 2 terms we used are force and violence. Discussing briefly the scope of both of them. Firstly, force relatively has a narrow definition. That means it is mainly used against persons. But when I'm referring to violence, it is a much wider term and is a comprehensive term which includes violence to property and inanimate objects. So basically, rioting will be committed when you use force or violence against a person or against any inanimate object or any property or any other object. Now moving forward, we need to understand the essentials of section 146. So whenever you're wanting to prove that yes, the riots have been committed, what all essentials are there that needs to be established? Firstly, the accused person being 5 or more in number, formed in an unlawful assembly. As already stated, first condition that you need to fulfill is that there are 5 or more persons who have formed an unlawful assembly. Unlawful assembly is defined under section 141 of your IP. Second criteria that you can look for is there is a common unlawful object. Third factor is use of force or violence by the unlawful assembly or any member. Last factor that you can look over here is such violence or force was used in the prosecution of common and unlawful object. So these are the certain factors जो कि आप look forward कर सकते हैं whenever you are trying to assess whether a particular assembly or whether a particular gathering of 5 or more person has committed riot or not. Moving forward and understanding certain other crucial factors. Firstly, that the actual force or violence must be used and a mere show of force is not sufficient. So some force or violence should be actually committed by the members of the assembly. Secondly, if the common object of the unlawful assembly is not illegal, it is not rioting, even if force is used by any member of that assembly. So this is just a basic criteria that अगर आपका common object जो कि unlawful assembly का है, that is itself not illegal. It is not rioting even if certain amount of force is used. Now, force is often used in your sudden quarrel. यानी कि let's say A and B की suddenly fight हो गई है and there's a sudden quarrel that has developed in that particular scenario, this particular fact will not come under your ambit of rioting. Moving forward and understanding punishment for committing riot with deadly weapon. Now, हमारी ordinarily जब आप riot commit करेंगे उससे significantly enhanced होगी punishment when you are committing the riots with a deadly weapon, because the amount of harm that you can do is drastically increased because you are in a possession of a deadly weapon. That's the basic understanding for providing a separate section for the same. So for this particular factor, you can read section 148 of your Indian Penal Code. So section 148 basically provides for an aggravated form of rioting, whereby it states that whoever is guilty of rioting, being armed with deadly weapon or with anything which used as a weapon of offence is likely to cause death, such a person shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 3 years or with fine or with both. So यहाँ पे punishment है 3 years की according to your Indian Penal Code. Now, mere fact that the person was carrying a deadly weapon while committing rioting makes him liable for the enhanced punishment under section 148. So, यहाँ पे the law will not see that whether the person A has used that particular deadly weapon or not. The mere fact that you are a part of a group which is committing rioting and the mere fact that you are in a possession will make you liable under section 148. Now, another important factor, if in an unlawful assembly that was using force, there is only one member who was armed with deadly weapon, let's say 5 or more की assembly है, however there is only one person A who is armed with deadly weapon, he alone will be held liable under section 148 and the remaining members of the unlawful assembly will go under which section? Under section 147. That's the basic section or the for your punishment for the offence of rioting, and an enhanced section will be prescribed for only that person who is in possession or who is using that deadly weapon in the riots. So moving forward, we'll be looking at punishment for provoking a riot, and for that you can go ahead and refer to your section 153. So section 153, if you read, basically provides for punishment of a person who by doing an illegal act maliciously or recklessly gives provocation to another to commit a riot. The words by doing an illegal act यहाँ पे ये denote करते हैं that the section cannot be brought into force unless the act done by a person was an illegal act. So दो factors हैं. Firstly, the person should commit an illegal act which should be responsible for provoking the riot, and the person should also be with full intention and knowledge that the act that the person is illegally committing would in all probability lead to riots. And section 153 exclude करता है अपने ambit से mere chance of provocation. mere chance, एक mere probability को section 153 cover नहीं करता, लेकिन provocation which in all likelihood would cause rioting would be included under your section 153, and in such case the imprisonment may extend to 6 months or with fine or with both. Quickly moving forward and understanding a very important aspect, that is the component of constructive liability in the offense of riots. So generally the people who participate, the people who are carrying a deadly weapon are of course held liable for committing the offense of rioting. But ऐसे कौन से cases हैं जहाँ पे land owner को, जिस land पे unlawful assembly एक riot commit करती है, उसके लैंड ओनर और ऑक्यूपायर को भी लायबल कर दिया जाएगा, और फॉर हुज बेनिफिट the riots have been committed, उनको भी लायबल कर दिया जाएगा. That is also there in our Indian Penal Code, and for that we'll be referring to section 154 to section 156. First, owner or occupier of land on which an unlawful assembly is held. Yes, if you have a land on which you being very much aware, your other members being very much aware, आप allow करते हैं that let the unlawful assembly gather, let they do whatever they want, you will be held liable under the Indian Penal Code. You can go ahead and read that in section 154 that prescribes liability on an owner or occupier of land. So section 154, if you'll read, basically it states that whenever an unlawful assembly or riot takes place, the owner or occupier of the land, both, upon which such unlawful assembly is held or such riot is committed, and any other person having or claiming an interest in such land, so कोई ऐसा person भी जिसका कोई interest है इस land में, shall be punishable. So everybody will be punishable with fine not exceeding ₹1,000. कब होगा ये? When he or his agent or manager, knowing that such offence is being or has been committed. Now अगर वो person aware है या उसका manager, agent, as I have already stated that अगर आप aware हैं या आपका manager aware है या आपका agent aware है that such particular unlawful assembly is gathering and committing the offence of rioting on your land, and the person fails to give notice to public authority about the unlawful assembly or riot and intentionally fail to give notice of unlawful assembly or riot which was about to be held or committed. And thirdly, the person fails to take appropriate measures for the suppression of unlawful assembly or riot. Such person, owner, occupier, or any person having the interest in that particular land will be held liable under section 154. Moving forward to your section 155. Section 155 prescribe करता है liability of a person for whose benefit riot is committed. So if you are deriving the benefits of riot and you are assuming that you will not be punished under the penal code or the provisions, you are wrong, as if you are one of the persons who is deriving the benefits from riot, if you are one of the reasons because of whom the riots have been committed, आपको भी punish किया जाएगा under the Indian Penal Code. So basically section 155 states that whenever a riot is committed for the benefit or on behalf of any person who is the owner or occupier of any land. So firstly, riot is committed for the benefit or on behalf of landowner or the occupier. And the riot is in respect of the land of which the accused is either the owner or the occupier. The accused accepts or derived benefit from the same or the riots, and no steps were taken on the part of the accused to prevent or oppress the riot or the unlawful assembly. In such case, the person deriving the benefits would be held liable under section 155 of the Indian Penal Code. So such a person will be punished with fine. So now moving forward and understanding the last aspect of today's video, which is section 152. 152 basically talks about liability of a person for obstructing suppression of a riot. So your section 152 basically deals with assaulting or obstructing a public servant when suppressing riot. So section 152 stops a person from using force or threatening to use force against a public servant with a view to deterring him from dispersing an unlawful assembly or suppressing a riot. तो ये section basically punish करता है, liable करता है उन persons को जो कि एक public servant को अपनी duty execute करने से prohibit करते हैं. यानी कि public servant की जो exact duty है, it is to disperse the unlawful assembly, it is to suppress the riot. However, if any person causes obstruction in between the same, such person would be held under section 152 for a term which may extend to 3 years or with fine or with both. So this sums up our video. We covered a lot of sections in today's video. The basic focus of today's video was covering sections relating to the provisions which have been mentioned for riots under your Indian Penal Code. We covered section 146. What is rioting? 147 आपका basic punishment of rioting. Section 148 आपका aggravated form of punishment for rioting. We covered section 153, punishment in case अगर आप riots को provoke करते हैं. We covered section 154 to 156 जो basically deal करते हैं constructive liability of person having interest in land on which an unlawful assembly is held or for whose benefit that particular riot is committed. So with this we come to the end of our video. I hope you did understand some of the aspects related to riots as an offense that have been defined or that have been stated under your Indian Penal Code. Again, any doubts, please put them down in the comment section down below. And as we always say till then, stay home, stay safe and keep learning.